Chapter 5. The First Descent. Every story of Hades begins at the gates of the underworld. Mortals believed that when breath left their body, they were guided down, past shadows and silence, toward the eternal realm. Here Cerberus stood guard, his three heads snarling at the living who dared approach and snapping shut at souls who thought to escape. To step across this threshold was not chaos, but inevitability, the moment where every life found its reckoning. And here lies the shocking truth. Hades's world was not one of torment, but of order, where even death bowed to law. Past the rivers of fate. Once within, the journey was not a straight path but a crossing of rivers, each one shaping destiny. The Styx bound oaths even the gods could not break. Acheron drowned souls in sorrow. Cocytus echoed with regret. Phlegethon burned with punishment. And Lethe erased memory itself. Each river was a trial, a passage that stripped mortals of who they were and marked who they would become. And this was the darkest plot twist. Death did not end the story. It rewrote it. The quiet judgment. At the heart of this journey waited judgment. Mortal souls stripped of wealth, status, and pride stood equal before the laws of the unseen king. Some were sent to the meadows of asphodel to drift in gray twilight. Others, the heroes, poets, and the rare favored ones, ascended to Elysium, basking in light and eternal glory. And the wicked, the betrayers, the enemies of gods and men, were swallowed into Tartarus, their punishment endless. But everything you know is wrong if you believe Hades passed these judgments alone. For he was a ruler of balance, aided by impartial judges, never cruel, never careless. The unseen ruler, unlike Zeus, whose thunder could shake mountains, or Poseidon, whose wrath could drown nations, Hades reigned through silence. His strength was not in storms, but in permanence. He did not hunt mortals, nor did he demand their endless worship. Instead, his power lay in inevitability, for no man, no king, no hero could escape his realm. This was the power that mortals misunderstood, mistaking his silence for malice, his inevitability for fear. Yet in truth, Hades was the most incorruptible ruler of them all. The descent continues. And so, the first descent reveals not a god of cruelty, but a guardian of order, a silent king who never broke his law, never abandoned his throne, and never sought glory outside his realm. His justice was final, his rule eternal, his silence unshakable. This is the shocking truth. The god of death was never the villain, but the balance life itself depended on. And if you've journeyed this far, our descent has only begun. Chapter 6. Persephone and the Stolen Spring. In the golden fields of spring, Persephone laughed among flowers, daughter of Demeter, goddess of harvest. The air was alive with life, with color, with renewal. But beneath the earth, another world stirred, and Hades, the unseen king, watched in silence. He who ruled over shadows saw in Persephone not just beauty, but balance, a queen for a kingdom forgotten. And here begins the shocking truth. The story told, as abduction was also a story of transformation, one that would bind life and death forever. The darkest plot twist. As Persephone plucked a blossom, the earth itself split open. From the chasm rose Hades in his chariot of obsidian steeds, a vision of inevitability wrapped in power. He seized her, drawing her into the depths below, leaving the meadow silent and the blossoms scattered. To mortals, this was abduction, a crime, a theft of spring itself. But here lies the darkest plot twist. In the eyes of the gods, marriage was never about mortal consent. It was about balance, about alliances, about cosmic order. And in Persephone, Hades found not a victim, but his equal. The grief of Demeter. When Demeter discovered her daughter's absence, the world itself began to wither. Fields turned barren, seeds refused to sprout, and famine stalked humankind. For the goddess of harvest, no bargain could soothe the grief of losing her only child. She wandered the earth in rage and sorrow, and mortals suffered under her despair. And here is where everything you know is wrong. The tale was not about Hades' cruelty, but about the devastating love of a mother, a grief so deep, it nearly ended all of humanity. The bargain of eternity. Zeus, fearing the death of mortals would starve the gods of worship, intervened. Messengers were sent to Hades, demanding Persephone's release, and Hades, unlike his tempestuous brothers, did not rage or defy. Instead, he abided by the law of balance. He allowed Persephone to return, but not without choice, for before she departed, he offered her a pomegranate, its seeds dripping with crimson promise. To eat was to bind oneself to the underworld. Persephone ate, and in that moment, she became more than a maiden. She became a queen. This was the shocking truth they never told. Persephone was not only taken, she chose to stay. The eternal cycle. And so, a new balance was born. Half the year, Persephone walked the earth, bringing spring and harvest with her mother. The other half, she descended to the underworld, ruling beside Hades as queen of shadows. Life and death, joy and sorrow, harvest and barrenness, all became a cycle, eternal and unbroken. Hades had not stolen spring. He had made it eternal by binding it to shadow. This is the darkest plot twist. Death and life are not enemies, but partners. And so the descent deepens, and the truth grows darker still. Chapter 7. The Clash of Heroes. For most mortals, the underworld was a place never to be seen, a land crossed only once and never returned from. But myths tell us of those rare, reckless souls who dared to descend into Hades' kingdom while still alive. They came not to submit but to steal, to rescue, to defy death itself. Their stories reveal the shocking truth. Even heroes, those chosen by destiny, could not escape the price of trespassing against the invisible king. And in each descent, the underworld revealed not chaos, but the unshakable law that Hades embodied. The arrogance of Theseus and Pirithous. Among the most audacious mortals were Theseus, slayer of the Minotaur, and his companion Pirithous. Flush with pride from their victories, the two devised a plan not of heroism, but of arrogance. They sought to claim daughters of the gods for their wives, and in madness, they set their eyes on Persephone herself, queen of the dead. To march into Hades' realm not for rescue but for theft of his queen was a crime of hubris unmatched. And here lies the darkest plot twist. Theseus, once seen as Athens' noble hero, became a fool blinded by pride, walking willingly into the jaws of eternal punishment. The chair of forgetfulness. When Theseus and Pirithous entered the underworld, they were met not with fire or fury, but with silence and cunning. Hades welcomed them, offering seats of honor, and the two sat down proudly. Yet these were no ordinary seats, but thrones of stone known as the chairs of forgetfulness. Once seated, they found themselves trapped, their minds clouded, their bodies frozen, their ambitions crumbling into dust. This was Hades' justice, subtle, eternal, inescapable. And everything you know is wrong if you think heroes always triumph. In the kingdom of shadows, even legends were reduced to stillness. Heracles and the price of friendship. Yet one of them would escape. Years later, Heracles in his labors descended into the underworld to seize Cerberus, the three-headed hound. On his way, he found Theseus imprisoned in the chair, his body weak, his spirit broken. With strength unmatched, Heracles pulled him free, but Pirithous was left behind, condemned forever for daring to desire Persephone. Here lies the shocking truth. Friendship could not overturn justice. Not even Heracles, the mightiest of heroes, could break the balance of Hades' law. For the underworld was not swayed by mortal bonds, but by eternal order. Orpheus and the Song of Sorrow. But not all who descended came with pride. Some came with grief. Orpheus, the poet and musician whose songs could charm even stones, journeyed into the underworld to reclaim his beloved Eurydice. With nothing but a lyre in hand, he sang so mournfully that the shades wept, the rivers stilled, and even Hades himself was moved. This was the darkest plot twist. The god whom mortals feared most was not immune to compassion. For Hades, stern and silent, listened, and against all expectation, he granted Orpheus his wish. Eurydice could return to life, but only if Orpheus walked ahead and never looked back. The fatal glance. As Orpheus led Eurydice upward, each step was heavier than the last, for temptation gnawed at him. He longed to know if she still followed, if her ghostly steps were still behind his own. Near the gates of light, doubt consumed him. He turned, just once, and in that instant, Eurydice was gone, swallowed back into shadow forever. And so, everything you know is wrong if you think the underworld was cruel in this tale. Hades kept his bargain. It was mortal weakness that doomed Eurydice a second time. Heracles and the three-headed trial. Heracles' own descent was no less perilous. Ordered to bring Cerberus to the surface world, he faced the beast with nothing but strength and courage. The Hound of Hades, a creature of nightmare with 3 snapping jaws, was a symbol of the barrier between life and death itself. To seize Cerberus was to defy the law of nature, to tear open the gate of eternity. Yet Heracles, blessed by strength and favor, grappled the beast into submission, dragging it upward into the world of men. But here lies the shocking truth. Heracles did not steal Cerberus. He borrowed him. For Hades, honoring the laws of labor, allowed the hero to succeed, but demanded the beast's return. The balance of defiance. What these stories reveal is that Hades was no tyrant to lash out in fury. He did not strike Theseus down with thunder, nor did he punish Orpheus with fire, nor did he slay Heracles for daring to wrestle his guardian. Instead, his power was subtler, heavier, and more eternal. He let arrogance consume itself, let sorrow teach its own lesson, let strength prove its worth. This was the balance of the invisible king, to rule not through cruelty, but through inevitability. And this is the darkest plot twist. The god feared most was the one who dealt most fairly, even with intruders in his realm. The price of defiance. Yet the cost was always there. Pirithous rotted in eternal bondage. Orpheus lost his love forever. Heracles, though victorious, returned scarred by the weight of shadows. No hero left Hades' realm unchanged, for to touch the borders of eternity was to carry the weight of death itself. And so, everything you know is wrong if you think the underworld was a place where heroes could simply win and leave. Victory here was always fleeting, always tainted, always bound to the laws that not even gods could undo. The echo of legends. The clash of heroes in Hades' kingdom reveals the deepest truth of all. The underworld was not built to be conquered, but to endure. No matter how mighty, how gifted, how chosen, every hero who dared step into the shadows left behind a story of failure, sorrow, or compromise. Hades' rule was unbroken, his throne untouched, his silence eternal. This is the shocking truth. In the end, the invisible king could not be challenged. And if these tales have left you breathless, then join us as the descent continues. Like this video, subscribe, and ring the bell, because in the next chapter, we reveal how the shadow of Hades shaped not just myths, but the very way humanity has imagined death for thousands of years.